Today I'm going to be doing a 2024 reading wrap up. Before I actually get into the video, I've gone to film literally just now, changed my battery, and my flip screen no longer works when it's flipped up. So if I'm looking like this way, it's because I'm looking in the mirror just to see what you guys can see, because I want you guys to still be able to see everything properly. So I'm so scared that this is gonna fall as I pick it up, and no, my luck, it will, because I've just organised them in order of what I read them. Oh, I'm so scared right now. But I don't know if I can even get it all in the shot. Oh my god, it's gonna fall. This is most of the non-fiction books that I read this year. I'm gonna split this part of the video into two parts. I'm gonna do my fiction reads and my non-fiction reads, because I'm gonna move this back a little bit so we've got a little bit more space to show everything. But I'm gonna split this into two things, one fiction and one non-fiction. I'm gonna start off with non-fiction just because I feel like that's a lot quicker, because I think there was about 5-ish non-fiction books that I read this year. So we're going to start off with The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I listened to this on Audible. I did an Audible free trial. I listened to it. I feel like I took some information in, but I didn't take like everything in, which is why I feel like audiobooks aren't for me unless they're fiction, because I feel like that's the only thing that I really keep up with, and even then I feel like I don't read like fiction, I don't listen to fiction that you have to like really keep up with, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would recommend this if you were kind of newer to spirituality as a whole, but I wouldn't say that this is like my favourite book about spirituality and all this and that. So I wouldn't say that, but I will read the blurb for you guys. To make the journey into the now, we need to leave our analytical mind and its false created self, the ego, behind. From the very first page of Eckhart Tolle's extraordinary book, we move rapidly into a significantly higher altitude where we breathe a lighter air. We become connected to the indestructible essence of our being, the eternal, ever-present one life beyond the myriad forms of life that are subject to birth and death. Although the journey is challenging, Eckhart Tolle uses simple language and easy question and answer format to guide us. A word-of-mouth phenomenon since its first publication, The Power of Now is one of those rare books with the power to create an experience in readers, one that can radically change their lives for the better. I just didn't feel like I was really learning anything new when I listened to this book. I felt like a decent amount of it, what I was listening to, was stuff that I already heard. So I wouldn't say this is a bad book, but I don't think it's one that I would necessarily recommend for that reason, if that makes sense. However, we picked things up in the non-fiction department, because the next non-fiction book that I read was Things No One Taught Us About Love by Vex King. I love Vex King's writing. I'm pretty sure all of his books are non-fiction, but at least the only ones I've read are non-fiction. He wrote Good Vibes, Good Life, and I'm gonna find it real quick. Healing is the New High. How did I forget about that one? I read Things No One Taught Us About Love, and this book is very tabbed. I've got my little like tab key here at the front. I really enjoyed this book, and I feel like it's a book that I will come back to when I need something, if that makes sense, which is why I've tabbed it. My tabs are for reassurance, self-love, relationships, and letting go. And I feel like whenever I need something, like just to help me deal with whatever it is that I'm going through, this book is the one that I will turn to, and I really loved it. It's about 300 pages long, but it is quite a short book. For reference, this is your average size book, and this is this book. So it is like a smaller book. So if it was like this normal size, I'd say it's probably about maybe 250 pages, maybe even 200? I don't know. I'm not a publisher. I don't know how books work really in sense of actual printing. But I would recommend this book to anyone who wants a non-fiction read. And I will probably stay on that until the day that I die, because I honestly think Vex King is one of my favourite non-fiction authors, and I read primarily fiction, but I have read quite a decent amount of non-fiction as well. I would recommend Vex King and any of his books that I've read so far to any. I will read the blurb for this now so you guys actually know what it's about. Let's harness the power of self-love to attract and sustain healthy relationships. Don't believe what they tell you about romantic love, finding a better half, love's rules and a predetermined type, or the rigid do's and don'ts of dating. Many of us have unrealistic expectations, hoping that romantic love will solve our problems. When our partners inevitably fall short of meeting all our needs, we're left frustrated, leaving us incomplete, hopping from one relationship to the next in a desperate attempt to regain a sense of wholeness. We've been misled into believing that love exists somewhere out there if we can only just find it. In fact, love is a powerful force that resides within ourselves, waiting to be unlocked and embraced. And then, I think I've read 4 non-fiction books. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I've read 6 non-fiction books this year, which I completely forgot to say. So I'm sorry about that. And I did skip past one, and that is The Power of Discipline, How to Use Self-Control and Mental Toughness to Achieve Your Goals by Daniel Walter. This was on Kindle Unlimited when I read it, and it is about the power of discipline and using discipline to achieve your goals. Again, I feel like there's not really that much that I can do to explain that, if that makes sense. This was a very short book as well from what I remember. I would say that like it was effective. I would recommend it. Discipline is something that I'm trying to work on and build up, so I did find this helpful. I would recommend it to anyone else in the same boat. It wasn't like my favourite book ever, like my favourite non-fiction book, and I can't really remember that much off the top of my head. I do have 73 highlights of it on my Kindle, so I feel like that says something. The next book that I read is The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. I enjoyed this where I am in my life right now. It wasn't life-changing. It took me a while to get through this, but I have had this on my shelf for probably about 4 years now, maybe even 5, so I'm really glad that I did pick this up and read it. I read it from March to I think like October time. Let's have a look. I finished it in August actually. I don't pick it up as much, especially if it's not on my Kindle and it's a physical book. I usually like to read non-fiction like in the morning when I'm like eating breakfast and stuff, so like if it's a physical book it's harder to do that, if that makes sense. But we'll read the blurb for you guys now. It goes, do not read this book unless you want a new way of living. Forget the old concept of retirement and saving for the future. There is no need to wait and every reason not to. Whether your dream is escaping the rat race, experiencing first-class world travel, earning a monthly 5-figure income with no management, or just living more and working less, this book is the blueprint. And it's got like a step-by-step guide sort of thing in it. I feel like some of this information is stuff that's been reiterated throughout the internet, and therefore it wasn't all like groundbreaking information to me, which is maybe why it wasn't like my favourite book, but I would say it was still worth the read. And I like when I finished uni and all this and that, like I do think it's something that I will go back to. I do have some tabs in it. I don't know what happened to my tabs after the first like half of the book because there is just none, but again I did enjoy this. And then the next book we have is Master Your Morning Routine, the essential guide to creating your personal morning routine that will actually work. This was a very short book. I think it was literally about 87 pages. And this is by Christopher Hall, and I'll read the blurb for this one. Wake up feeling fresh, be in control of every morning, and stay extremely productive during the day by mastering your morning routine, how you would like. Wake up feeling excited and ready, have a clear plan and vision for every day, and get things done. Stay productive by boosting your energy levels and then end up with more free time every day. If this sounds great to you, then it's time to master your morning routine. Imagine waking up feeling great and feeling like time stands still while you are crossing off a task off your to-do list. I'm not going to read the rest of the blurb that's on Goodreads just because I feel like I'm just going to be repeating myself a little bit. This book was good. It wasn't bad. But again, I feel like it's something where a lot of this information has been reiterated throughout the internet. So it's nothing groundbreaking to me. It's nothing like, oh my god, like this is a completely new thing that I need to try because I haven't heard anyone talk about before. It's not like that. It was good. It was on Kindle Unlimited, so I didn't pay for it. I probably wouldn't have picked it up if it wasn't on Kindle Unlimited. And that leads me on to The Greatest Secret by Rhonda Byrne. This is, as you could probably tell, this is one of the books from The Secret Library. This is number 5, and I've only read the first one and this one. I have 47 highlights from this book, and I did really enjoy this one. This is very much law of attraction and manifestation. So if you're not interested in that, what are you doing here? This is not the book for you. So I will read out the blurb. It goes, from Rhonda Byrne, the author of the worldwide phenomenon The Secret, comes The Greatest Secret, a long-awaited major new work that offers revelations and practices to end suffering and discover lasting happiness. Ancient traditions knew that to hide a secret it should be put in plain sight, where no one will think to look for it. Billions of people on our planet have searched, but few have discovered the truth. I haven't got my glasses on. Those few are completely free from negativity and live in permanent peace and happiness. For the rest of us, whether we realise it or not, we've been in search of this truth unceasingly every single day of our lives. What secret can possibly be so life-changing? What single discovery offers a direct path to end suffering and live a life deep of joy? The Greatest Secret is a quantum leap that will take the reader beyond the material world and into the spiritual realm where all possibilities exist. I'm going to leave it there. There is a little bit more, but I feel like I'm yabbering. I would recommend this book. I love reading about the law of attraction. I love reading about manifestation. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I have a lot of highlights from this book. If you are looking and like want to research the law of attraction, manifestation, or just kind of the spiritual world a little bit, then I would definitely recommend any of Rhonda Byrne's books. I mean, I've only read The Secret and The Greatest Secret, but I do have her other books on my TBR. Yeah, I would really recommend this book. I had a good time reading it. And that leads me on to the final non-fiction read of this year, and that is Sacred Seasons by Kirsty Gallagher. This is in my reading vlog, so I'm not going to go into depth with this one, if that makes sense. So yeah, it would have been my last video before this one that you're watching now, but this is about getting in touch with nature and connecting with the seasons, the astrological cycles and the lunar phases in order to live well and thrive. I really enjoyed this. I have quite a few tabs, and the book is really pretty. I got this from the works. I think it's literally £5, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. And it has made me want to read more of Kirsty Gallagher's books. I'm pretty sure, what other book does she write? There's one that I hear a lot of people in the like non-fiction, manifestation, law of attraction sort of world talk about. I think Francesca Amber's book club did it for 1 month, because I used to be in the book club and I remember them talking about it before. I'm gonna have to Google this because it's gonna annoy me. Lunar Living, there we go, that is what it's called. I think I want to read Lunar Living next year. Just put it out there. maybe it happened. I really enjoyed this. I will read more of her books now, and I am going to go through all the fiction books that I read this year, which is most of them. So my reading goal was 21 books, and my total books I read this year, bear in mind it is the 19th of December when I'm filming this, and I'm hoping I will also have The Risk by St. Abbey finished by the end of the year also. So my current title, why do I keep saying title? My current total for this year is 37 books, which I feel like is really good. Pretty good, I'm proud of myself. The first book that I read this year was The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. I picked this up because I wanted a book that I was going to get invested in and read really quickly, just to help me. I feel like I was in a little bit of a reading slump. So I picked this up and I ended up rating it a 3.75 out of 5. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. It definitely wasn't my favourite Frida McFadden book. I will now proceed to read the blurb for this book. Erica Cass has a perfect family and a perfect life, until the evening when 2 detectives show up at her front door. A high school girl has vanished from Erica's quiet suburban neighbourhood. The police suspect the worst, murder, and Erica's teenage son Liam was the last person to see the girl alive. Erica has always sensed something dark and disturbed in her seemingly perfect older child. She wants to believe he's innocent, but as the evidence mounts, she can't deny the truth. Liam may have done the unthinkable. Now she must ask herself how far will she go to protect her son. I think the reviews on this one average about 3.5. And I would say that I fall in like the average rating for that, just because, like I said, it was nothing special. It was a good read. I wouldn't read it again. Like, I couldn't see myself ever reading this again. And if I were to recommend a thriller to someone, it probably wouldn't be this book. Especially not by Frida McFadden, because there are other books by her that are just so much better, if that makes sense. And that leads me on to our next book, which I'm so excited to talk about. And this one is actually a YA romance, which I don't pick up YA a ton anymore. I am 21, so I feel like I'm kind of growing out of it. However, saying that, I do have quite a few things on my bookshelves that are YA that I picked up years ago and then never read. So I feel like this year, like this coming year, I will pick up a little bit more YA, because I want to get these books read before I like properly grow out of them. And I feel like it's a good way to what's the word? Like, I feel like reading YA is quick and it's easy, if that makes sense. Anyway, so book number 2 is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I picked this up because I love Ali Hazelwood. The cover is just beautiful. And this, this is her first YA romance. And it was also my first 5-star of the year. I finished this in January, at the end of January. I really enjoyed this. I read it very quickly. I will read the blurb out for you guys, and I hope you'll see why. Mallory Greenleaf is done with chess. Every move counts nowadays after the sport led to the destruction of her family 4 years earlier. Mallory's focus is on her mum, her sisters, and the dead-end job that keeps the lights on. That is until she begrudgingly agrees to play in one last charity tournament and inadvertently wipes the board with notorious king killer Nolan Sawyer, current world champion and reigning bad boy of chess. Nolan's loss to an unknown rookie shocks everyone. What's even more confusing? His desire to cross pawns again. What kind of gambit is Nolan playing? The smart move would be to walk away, resign, game over, but Mallory's victory opens the door to Saw needed cash prizes, and despite everything, she can't help feeling drawn to the enigmatic strategist. As she rockets up the ranks, Mallory struggles to keep her family safely separated from the game that wrecked it in the first place. And as her love for the sport she so desperately wanted to hate begins to rekindle, Mallory quickly realises that the games aren't only on the board. The spotlight is brighter than she imagined, and the competition can be fiercely attractive and intelligent and infuriating. I really loved this. I loved the couple. I love both of them, like, as individuals as well as together. I don't really have much knowledge on chess. I don't really have much interest in chess. However, this book, loved it. You don't need to have any information on how chess works in order to read this book. So if you're thinking, yeah, but I don't really know, how to play chess, I don't care about chess, neither do I. And this was 5-star read for me. I feel like because it is YA, again, like, it was so easy to pick up and it was so easy to go through, and I really, 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 really loved it. The next book that I read was, and I don't have this one, I gave it away because I did not like it. So that is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I think I'd rate this a 2.5. I didn't like it. I actually found the main character quite infuriating, honestly. Didn't like her, and I thought that the main problem that the character was going through and what that resulted in could have been very easily solved by communication. I really did enjoy the flashbacks. I didn't like the current timeline. I found it boring. I found it infuriating, actually. I wouldn't recommend this book. I did give it to a friend because I knew I was never going to read it again. But I will read the blurb for this. And I read this for my Reading YouTubers 5-star reads video. I really enjoyed, like, the books that I read for that video, for the main part. I think that's the only book I didn't like. I will read the blurb out now. Because Colleen Hoover delivers a tour de force novel about a troubled marriage and the one old forgotten promise that might be able to save it. Quinn and Graham's perfect love is threatened by their imperfect marriage. The memories, mistakes and secrets that they have built up over the years are now tearing them apart. The one thing that could save them might also be the very thing that pushes their marriage beyond the point of repair. The next book I read, which was also for the video that I was just talking about, is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I rated this 4 stars. I did really enjoy this book. I will read out, I think this was my favourite quote because I have 6 highlights from the book, but I only have one that I wrote down in my reading journal. How many people will look at me like he does? Not just like I'm the sun, but like I'm the whole goddamn universe. I was like, I liked the book. I got to the end, I finished it and I was like, what the fuck? I need to read the next one. I finished this in March and I still haven't read the next one. I think I want to read it this coming year because I do really want to know what the fuck happens. And the next one is, I think, the first Daisy Hates book. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens. I'm not going to explain Magnolia Parks because I talk about it all in my other video, if that makes sense. But the next book that I read was The Teacher by Frida McFadden. I rated this a 4.75. Again, most of Frida McFadden's books are at least a 4 for me. And yeah, I will read out the blurb for this one. Lesson number 1. Trust no one. Eve has a good life. She gets up each day, gets a kiss from her husband Nate, and heads off to teach math at a local high school. All as it should be, except last year, Kasem High was rocked by a scandal involving a student-teacher affair, with one student, Addie, at its centre. But Eve knows that there was far more to these ugly rumours than meets the eye. Addie can't be trusted. She lies, she hurts people, she destroys lives. At least that's what everyone says, but nobody knows the real Addie. Nobody knows the secrets that could destroy her, and Addie will do anything to keep quiet. I really enjoyed this. I picked this up just because I wanted to read a Frida McFadden book, to be honest. Like, it wasn't for any specific reason other than that. I think it was a newer release at the time as well. The next book that we have is my second 5 stars of the year. Again, this book I read for my 5-star reads video, so I'm not gonna go in depth about it now, but it is Ghosted by J.M. Darhauer. Loved this book. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. This book is one book that I would reread. It is a second chance romance, which I don't think I read second chance romance before, and I didn't think I'd be that much of a fan because of that. However, I will reread this book at some point in my life. There are so many books that I love, but I'm just like, I don't know if I'd like reread it again. Like, would I go out of my way to reread it instead of reading a new book? I don't know. However, this is one book that I would go out of my way to read again. This has like diary entries that are from the past that you read, so it's also, I don't know if you could technically class it as alternating timeline. I would class it as alternating timeline because you're reading diary entries from the past and then you go into the next chapter and it's the present timeline, if that makes sense. So yeah, I loved this book. The next one is another Frida McFadden book, and that is The Locked Door. I enjoyed this one. I rated it 4 stars. So I must have quite enjoyed it at the time. It wasn't my favourite, and I don't know, I wasn't as shocked by it, if that makes sense. Like, when I read Frida McFadden, I want to be jaw dropped with the plot twist. I think looking at it now, I would probably rate it 3.75 rather than a 4. Some doors are locked for a reason. While 11-year-old Nora Davis was up in her bedroom doing homework, she had no idea her father was killing women in the basement, until the day the police arrived at their front door. Decades later, Nora's father is spending his life behind bars, and Nora is a successful surgeon with a quiet, solitary existence. Nobody knows her father was a notorious serial killer, and she intends to keep it that way. Then Nora discovers one of her young female patients has been murdered, in the same unique and horrific manner that her father used to kill his victims. Somebody knows who Nora is. Somebody want her to take the fall for this unthinkable crime. But she's not a killer like her father. The police can't pin anything from her as long as they don't look in her basement. The next book I have is one that was quite highly anticipated for me, and it is another one for my 5-star reads video, because if you can't tell, at this time I was filming that video, and that is As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. I read the first book, it was during lockdown when COVID hit, and it was right around, like, I was reading it over my birthday. I remember laying in the garden and reading the first book throughout my birthday, and when I picked this one up, just happened to fall over my birthday again 3 years later. I really, really loved this book. Did I rate it 5 stars? I think I did. I did rate it 5 stars. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I'm not going to talk about it because, again, I already talked about it in a different video, but this is the third and final book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, which has recently been turned into a TV show. I feel like this was such an amazing way to wrap up the series. The next book I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is Ali Hazelwood's first paranormal romance. I don't read vampires, I don't read werewolves, I don't read fantastical creatures in that sense. I don't know if that's even like the right term. Ouch. But I read about half of the first Twilight book, which is Twilight. Didn't like it, DNF'd it. And it takes a lot for me to actually DNF a book most of the time. I love this. I rate this 4.75, and barring one thing in the book, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I feel like if you read it, you will know what I mean by that. Misery, who is the main female character, is set in an arranged marriage with the alpha, Lo, I think his name is. Yeah, Lo. He's a werewolf, she's a vampire, they get married, and she then has to go and live on Were territory, where she, I don't think she's ever been before, but also I think that it was pretty like before, if you went there as a vampire, you'd be like kept as prisoner or something. I was actually thinking the other day that I want to reread it because I had such a good time reading it. So the next book is Praised by Sarah Kate. I saw this on, I think someone recommended it on Instagram. I saw it was on Kindle Unlimited, so I was kind of just like, you know what, I'll read it. It was something new. This is ex-boyfriend's dad trope, which is something I have never read before. It's also like kind of forbidden because she's his employee. It was spicy, so if you're not into spice, I would not even pick up this book. I did like the characters in this book. It wasn't like my favourite read. I rated this as 3.75. It was good. I am now on to one of my favourite reads of the year, which I feel like is a big statement. And of course is another 5 stars. That is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I'm gonna not go into too much detail and ramble about this one for too long, because I do talk about it in the 5-star reads video, because that is what I read it for. And I think this was my favourite book that I read for that video, and I had 5 stars in that video. I think I only read 5 books for that video, so 3 5 stars in that. This chef's kiss. I think about this book all the time. This book will always have a special place in my heart. I can't lie. It's giving me Hunger Game vibes. I haven't read the Hunger Games, but based off of the movies that I've seen, it gives me Hunger Game vibes, and I think that is kind of like what the author was going for. But this will probably remain one of my favourite books for quite a long time. The next one is The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This was good. I rated it 3 stars, I think, because I didn't like the ending. I enjoyed it until I got basically to the end, then I was just like, I saw that coming, sort of thing. Like the very ending, I was like, oh, okay. I saw what happened coming, but I didn't see the reason why coming, if that makes sense. So I was still a bit shocked, but I was like surprised. It didn't have that shock factor for me that I love Frida McFadden's books for. But I'll read the blurb out for you guys. There are 3 rules Brooke Sullivan must follow as a nurse practitioner at a men's maximum security prison. Treat all the prisoners the same, never reveal any personal information, and never ever become too friendly with the inmates. But none of the staff at the prison knows Brooke has already broken the rules. Nobody knows about her intimate connection to Shane Nelson, one of the penitentiary, I don't even know how to say that, most notorious and dangerous inmates, and they certainly don't know that Shane was Brooke's high school sweetheart, a star quarterback who is now spending the rest of his life in prison for a series of grisly murders, or that Brooke's testimony was what put him there, but Shane knows and he will never forget. I loved the first 3/4 of the book. I'd say 3/4, maybe 2/3, that sort of thing. And then it went downhill for me. I was kind of thinking that it was going to be like a 4-star, at least, really. But I think 3.25 is where I land with this one. That leads me on to my next book, which was very highly anticipated for me. And that is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. First of all, sprayed edges, because this year was the year that I became obsessed with sprayed edges, because it wasn't my first sprayed edges book, but it was my first one that just wasn't like a blank colour, if that makes sense. But I have had this since literally, I think it was the day it came out, and I was waiting till summer to pick this up, purely just because of the cover and the fact that they're at a summer camp. I really love summer camps, like reading about summer camps, because I feel like it's not something a lot of people in England at least have experienced, but it's something that I like reading about, mainly because of The Parent Trap. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I rated it 4.5. I will read the blurb for you guys. When Ross and Aurora cross paths at a university party, a drinking game ends with them spending the night together. But Aurora slips away before Russ learns her full name. This anonymity ends when they both turn up to their first day of work as camp counsellors, a job they had both chosen to escape Maple Hills for the summer. Given their history, there's still obvious tension between the two, but the camp has a strict no-staff fraternising rule. Ross doesn't want to risk heading home early, but Aurora has never been one for rules. As things heat up, they'll have to resist or risk starting something they just can't stop. Love this, would read it. Oh, I'm a pleb because I skipped over one, but it is Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is number 1 in the Chestnut Springs series. I rated this 4 stars, and I had a really good time. I will read the blurb. The rules were simple: keep my hands off his daughter and stay out of trouble, but now I'm stuck with her, and there's only one bed. Oh well, rules are made to be broken, aren't they? I'm the face of the professional bull riding, the golden boy, or at least I was until it all blew up in my face. Now my agent says I have to clean up my image, so I'm stuck with his bull busting daughter for the rest of the season as my full-time supervision. But I don't need a goddamn babysitter. This was my first cowboy romance sort of thing, and I fear that it has started something because I loved this book so much, and it was my first Elsie Silver book also. I rated it 4 stars because it wasn't 5-star to me, but it was a really good book. It made me want to read the rest of the series. And then the next book is Guided by Emma Smith. This book was different to a book that I have read before, in the sense that I don't read a lot of books that are set in England. Obviously A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is set in England, but I don't think many of the other books that I've read this year are set in England, and I liked that, if that makes sense. I like that I kind of know what she's talking about, although I'm not familiar with the areas that she talks about. I did like that it was something that I could really imagine myself, if that makes sense. I'm gonna rate this a 3.75 because I wasn't like, oh my god, I really want to pick it up, and I felt that it was a little bit too YA for me. Like I said earlier on, I feel like I'm kind of growing out of YA, and sometimes it's fine and sometimes it's too young for me. This I feel was a little bit too young for me, but I will read out the blurb. She knows, I know she knows. She knows I know exactly what happened to Lexi. When left in charge of a group of girl guides, 17-year-old Macy is only thinking of making it through the weekend. But when an innocent camp ends in tragedy, everything in her life seems to spiral out of control. If losing her friends, boyfriend and status isn't enough, the guilt is eating her up inside, becoming too much to bear. People asking questions, pointing the finger of blame. Nobody knows what happened that night. Nobody but Macy. It's a little bit coming of age, I would say, and a little bit mystery. And I did enjoy it, but I don't know if I'd continue this series. And then the next book is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I am so goddamn happy that I picked this up so quickly after it came out. I rated this 4 stars. A forbidden secret affair proves all is fair in love and science. Ruth Siebert might not have it all, but she has enough. A few friends she can always count on, the financial stability she yearned for as a kid, and a successful career as a biotech engineer at Klein, one of the most promising startups in the field of food science. Her world is stable, pleasant and hard fought, until a hostile takeover and its offensively attractive front man threatens to bring it all crumbling down. Eli Kilgore and his business partners want Klein, period. Eli has his own reasons for pushing this deal through, and he's a man who gets what he wants, with one burning exception, Rue, the woman he can't stop thinking about, the woman who's off limits to him. Torn between loyalty and an undeniable attraction, Rue and Eli throw caution out the boardroom windows. Their affair is secret, no strings attached, and has a built-in deadline, the day one of their companies will prevail. But the heart is risky business, one that plays for keeps. I enjoyed this book. I really did enjoy it. Any Ali Hazelwood book, for me, is just an automatic purchase because I love it. So, the next book we have is The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This is my first Sarah Adams book. I have had this on my TBR since it blew up on TikTok, like the first time. So I'm so glad I've finally read this book. I rated it 4.5. I love it. I just really love it. This is a closed door romance as well. This is like a friends to lovers, but basically she is a dance teacher and he is an NFL player. This is like fake dating, friends to lovers. The main male character, Nathan, his publicist basically encourages him to enter a fake relationship with his best friend Brie, and she is secretly in love with him. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is Heartless by Elsie Silver. I rated this a 4.75. I loved this book. Love this. I will read the blurb out for you guys. Working as a nanny for the world's grumpiest single dad should have been simple, except I can't keep my eyes off him, and he can't keep his hands off of me. Cade Eaton is 13 years older than I am and barely looks my way, until I get him into the hot tub one night for a game of truth or dare. Then all bets are off, and so are our clothes. He's gruff and a little rough around the edges, but broad-shouldered ranchers with calloused hands and filthy mouths are the city girl's kryptonite. So who am I to resist? But it's in our quiet moments together that he softens, and it's when he takes care of me that I realise his hardened exterior is just a facade. It's when I watch him go all sweet with his little boy that I really fall for him. Someone convinced him that his best wasn't good enough, but I've never felt more cherished than I do in his arms. My contract may say this arrangement is only for 2 months, but my heart says this is forever. This is a nanny single dad romance. I freaking loved this. I loved him, I loved her, I loved the kid in this book as well. The next book is His and Hers by Alice Feeney. I read this for a book that will for a video that will be out in February, so I'm not going to go into detail about it. I had a good time. I rated this a 4, but I think I'd actually go back and rate this a 3.5. It was okay, it wasn't anything special. So yeah, this one's like a mystery thriller sort of thing. And then next we have probably one of my favourite reads, and I feel like I said this a lot, but I feel like this year has just been such a good reading year. The next one is Daydream by Hannah Grace. And look at the sprayed edges. It's beautiful. This book I think will always hold a special place in my heart, and I'm going to say it for like the next one and the one after that, I think, actually, because I just freaking love it. It is just I think the thing that I love the most in this book is the communication between the characters, but also just the understanding that they have for each other, if that makes sense. I think that Hallie is one of my favourite characters because I just feel like I just resonate so much with her. I will read out the blurb for this. As a chronic procrastinator, Henry Turner always knew his junior year in college wasn't going to be easy. That was before he made ice hockey captain, as well as landed himself in a difficult class with his least favourite professor. Thankfully, it's then that Henry meets Hallie, a fellow junior whom he immediately befriends. Academic pressure has never been a struggle for Hallie, but as an introverted people pleaser with a tendency to overcommit herself, she can't help but offer to help Henry pass his class. In turn, he offers to help make college life a little more inspiring, just the thing she needs as an aspiring novelist. Failure isn't an option for either of them, but that doesn't mean there isn't a little room for distraction. Love it. This is the 3rd book in the Maple Hills series, and it is my favourite as well. And I read Wildfire only like a couple months before this, and I love everything about this book. I love the cover, I love the characters, I love their like friendship and the relationship and just everything in between. And I did rate this a 5 stars, didn't I? I did rate this a 5 stars. This book I read as one of the books for a part 2 of my 5-star reads video, which is coming out in February. And I will always have a special place in my heart for this book. I think this is a book that I will recommend through and through. And I did think I was going to like it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to love it because it does have a pregnancy trope. And I haven't been a massive fan of the pregnancy trope when it happens towards the end of a book, but happens at the beginning. That is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young. And first of all, this book is just, the cover is just, I don't even know how to explain it other than just the cover. But I will read the blurb. Winifred McNulty has always been wildly independent and not one to be coddled for her limb difference. Win has spent most of her life trying to prove that she can do it all on her own. With some minor adjustments, she's done just fine. Hooking up at a costume party with the incredibly charming Beau changes everything. Win finds herself pregnant and decides to keep the baby. While Beau is surprisingly elated to step up to the plate, Win is unsure whether she can handle this new challenge. Together, Win and Beau decide to get to know each other as friends and nothing more while they embark on this parenting journey together. But as they both should know by now, life rarely goes according to plan. They're made for each other. It's all I can say. Like, they are meant to be together. One of my favourite things about this book, and it is why I did put it on my TBR, when it was first released because I wanted to read more books with disabled characters. I am disabled myself. I didn't pick this up until I was filming for the video. It's 5 stars. I love it so much, and it's nice to read a book where you feel represented. The next book we have is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Rose Hill series. I really enjoyed this. I rated it 4 stars. I wasn't finding myself constantly wanting to pick it up, but if I'd sit down and read it, I'd get really into it, and then when I got like halfway, I kind of just like read it really fast from that point onwards, if that makes sense. This is about Rosie and Ford, and I love them as a couple so much. All the books in this series are single dad. Forbes may have labelled Ford Grant the world's hottest billionaire, but all he cares about is escaping the press and opening a recording studio in the gorgeous small town Rose Hill. Something that comes to a screeching halt when he ends up face to face with the young girl who claims he's her biological father. After years of living in the city, Rosie comes back into town like a storm, beautiful, messy and chaotic. One wide-eyed, desperate plea for a job is all it takes for Ford to hire her. He vows to keep her at an arm's length, but with her, verbal sparring is a type of foreplay, friction that soon turns into blistering heat. Ford knows damn well he shouldn't cross this line, but shouldn't and can't are 2 very different things, and the only thing he truly can't do is resist her. I love this book. I recommend any book that I've read by Elsie Silver. I just love every book I've read by her. And then the next book I have is Powerful by Lauren Roberts. Again, beautiful sprayed edges. I really love this book. It's the novella between Powerless and Reckless, which I really did enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to like this as much as I did. I rated this a 3.75. And this is essentially Powerless, but from Adina's perspective. So everything that happens in Powerless happens in this book. However, instead of seeing it from Payden's perspective, you see it from her best friend's perspective. But it also means you get to follow Adina and Mac and their own romance. I really enjoyed this book. I did cry at the end. Obviously, when you finish Powerless, this ends the same way because they run at the same time. It's just you're with Adina rather than with Payden. The next 2 books that I read that I'm going to talk about, I read for uni, so they weren't books that I would have picked up if it weren't for that, if that makes sense. And that is Far From the Madding Crowd and Hotel World. So Far From the Madding Crowd is by Thomas Hardy. I enjoyed it, like it definitely wasn't like a bad book. And the next one is Hotel World by Ali Smith, and again, I wouldn't have picked this up if it weren't for uni. However, this is my favourite book that I've read for uni so far. Hotel World, however, was a very different book to anything that I've ever read, and the way that Ali Smith writes is just, I really enjoyed it. But I will read the blurb out for this one. It's set in the Global Hotel, which is, it's just a hotel, and you get the different perspectives of, I think it's 5 different characters, and they all like have something to do with the hotel, if that makes sense. I will read that now. So, the disembodied yet interconnected characters include Sarah, a 19-year-old chambermaid who recently died at the hotel, her bereaved sister Claire, who visits the scene of Sarah's death, Penny, an advertising copywriter who is staying in the room opposite, Lise, the Global's depressed receptionist, and the homeless Else, who begs on the street outside. Smith's ambitious prose explores all facets of language and its uses. Sarah takes us through the moment of her exit from the world and beyond, and in her desperate fading grip on words and senses, she gropes to impart the meaning of her death in what she terms the lift for dishes. Then comes a flash of clarity. I really enjoyed this one. And then we are nearing the end. The next one we have is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I have mixed opinions on this book. I'm not going to talk about this one or the next 3 too much because I talk about them a lot in my recent reading vlog, which is the last video before this one. I enjoyed this I love the cover as well. It's just beautiful. And again, sprayed edges. If I ever have the option to get the sprayed edges, I will. But I enjoyed this. I rated it, I think, a 3.75. I rate 4 according to Goodreads. I did enjoy this. It wasn't my favourite in the series. I feel like I'm gonna love Fearless, which is the third and final book in the trilogy. I feel like I'm gonna love that one more than this one. So yeah, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. The next 3 books are On His Way Back to Me, The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden, and The Devil You Know, all of which I talk about in that reading vlog, so I'm not going to go into now. And then the last book that I have finished so far this year is Twisted Lies by Anna Huang. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't think I was going to like it this much, and I kind of put off reading this because I really loved Twisted Games. I liked Twisted Love. I liked Twisted Hate. And I was kind of just like, I don't know whether I'm going to love this or whether it's going to be like on the same line as Twisted Love and Twisted Hate. My final rating of the series is Twisted Games, then Twisted Lies, Twisted Love and Twisted Hate. I really, really, really love this one. Really love this. This is fake dating as well, which I do quite like the fake dating trope. He's a billionaire, which, need I say any less? Really liked his character. I liked Stella as well. I really enjoyed this book, and I haven't decided on my final rating yet because I literally finished this a couple days ago, but I'm leaning towards, I think, a 4.25. That is all the books that I have finished and read throughout 2024. There is 2 books that I'm currently reading now, which I'm hoping to add on to my total books read this year, and what I will do is when I finish those, I will update it on my Goodreads so that you guys can see my thoughts if you're interested. I was going to include my 2025 goals and anticipated releases, but I think I'm going to do that in a separate video just because I feel like this video is already quite long. I feel like this year has just been such a good year of reading because not only have I read a lot, but I've just read so many good books, if that makes sense, and that's what matters to me. It's more quality over quantity. But I feel like I've flew through quite a few books this year, and I'm just happy that I managed to like tick off quite a few books that I've been wanting to read for a while. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.